Well, just recently, Hillary Clinton said that Brett Kavanaugh could not be allowed on the Supreme Court. We had to believe his accusers, she said, even without evidence. But Clinton turns out to be one of the most self-aware politicians in this country. That's a high bar. So it wasn't too surprising that on Sunday she backtracked from this position. She told CBS that her own husband had no obligation to resign over the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Some today have said he should have stepped down.
In retrospect, do you think Bill should have resigned in the wake of the Monica Lewinsky scandal?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't an abuse of power?
No, no.
There are people who look at the incidents of the 90s and they say a president of the United States cannot have a consensual relationship with an intern. The power imbalance is too great.
Who was an adult. But let me ask you this. Where's the investigation of the current incumbent?
Well, even the ladies of The View are not buying this line of argument. Instead, they ripped Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, for her evasive interview tactics. Here's a selection.
What she just did is exactly what the Republicans do.
Right.
They change the subject. So that's why we never get anywhere in the discourse.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know you have a bad argument when your immediate response is, well, they were worse. Call it out for being wrong and for being bad for all those years. I just don't think she can have it both ways.
Nina Frederick claims that Hillary tried to intimidate her into silence. Kathleen Wiley claims the Clintons tried to intimidate her into not telling the truth. She called Monica Lewinsky a narcissistic Looney Tune. Jennifer Flowers, some failed cabaret singer. Democrats have got to move on from the Clintons.
Camille Paglia is an author, one of the country's best-known cultural critics. She has written extensively about Hillary Clinton for more than 20 years, among many other topics. Her latest book is titled Provocations, and Camille Paglia joins us tonight. We're honored to have you. Thank you very much for coming on. So,
thank you, Tucker.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton is mentioned actually quite a bit in this book.
Yes.
Before I ask you broader questions about what's happening in this country, what's your reaction to her role in the kind of Me Too movement of right now?
Well, it's very ambiguous. I think that her history has been hypocritical. I was the only Democrat feminist to call for Bill Clinton's resignation, and I had voted for him twice and don't regret it. But it was a scandal, the squalor that he introduced into the people's house. All this was happening, the servicing of him by an intern in the White House offices.
Yes. No, it's a very good point and a good reminder. So what, as someone who's written about sex and gender roles and our society for so long, for many decades, what do you make of the convulsion we're going through, particularly of the Me Too movement?
Well, it's great that attention is being paid to the women being abused. In 1986, I was lobbying for moderate sexual harassment guidelines at my university in Philadelphia. But I think we've gone a bit too far here. I think that fundamental civil rights involving the presumption of innocence have to be considered. So what I espouse as a feminist is that women themselves must take charge of their own interactions with men. They must signal at the time that something is unacceptable. This waiting 10 years, 20 years, 30 years this is not only not American, it's Stalinist.
But women, we're told again and again by people who claim to empower women, are themselves powerless and they can't say anything because they're so
absolute nonsense.
Lacking in power.
Nonsense.
Okay.
No, working class women, yes, may be so dependent upon a job that they cannot protest. But as I have written, there's no excuse for well-educated, upper-middle-class professional women to let offenses to their dignity go by. You must draw the line when it happens. It's absurd that you feel too powerless. You can't complain. These people, women who say that, are simply putting the career advantage over the larger question of feminist issues and the protection of women.
You've written so much about, just be blunt, about sex for all these years. What do you make of seeing your, I guess, former allies on the left strike an almost evangelical or Puritan position on these questions, a kind of blue nose outrage at sensual pleasure, at personal happiness, telling you that, you're not allowed to do this or do that? What do you make of this?
Well, there has been a split within feminism since second-wave feminism was born in the late 1960s. The media have been extremely lazy in not pursuing this. I belong to the pro-sex, pro-pop culture wing of feminism. I favor the legalization of prostitution. I have defended pornography. I admire strip clubs, et cetera, et cetera. So there has been this argument for a very long time. My branch won in the 90s thanks to Madonna suddenly bursting on the scene. But Madonna has faded and lost all sense of her own trajectory. And I am astonished after the victory of the pro-sex wing that we're back to feminist puritanism again of the Andrea Dworkin kind. We're talking about mental imbalance. We're talking about hysteria that has nothing whatever to do with women's rights. These are neurotics, okay, who are talking about hatred of men, who are poisoning the culture, making it more difficult for young women to reconcile with young men.
You may not agree with Camille Paglia if you're watching the show, but trust me, one of the more interesting people out there and an engaging writer, and this is her new book, Provocations, and they do indeed provoke. Camille Paglia, it's great to see you tonight. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Tucker.